In light of the recent SA Game Jam, we thought we'd have a little discussion about the jamming culture at Free Lives and share some of our thoughts about game jams in general.
So there's a strong jamming culture at Free Lives. This kind of comes from the fact that Broforce started as a game jam. That was taken as a lesson that game jams were useful. And we've very much been following that up, hosting game jams regularly, inviting people over to our offices to do game jams, and hosting larger game jams open to the whole South Africa. And that, from our perspective, is giving back to the community and giving them a chance to maybe make something that also really benefits them. All of that said, I know that most game jams don't result in something like Broforce. Most game jams don't result in anything that gets followed up.
Well, I think there's evidence that game jams are a good way to find new ideas. I mean, all three of Free Lives games that are on Steam were jams. There's a lot of benefit to game jams that aren't necessarily the games that you get out of them themselves, in terms of like developing skills and like growing the community and kind of
Collaborating
keeping your
with
motivation and your creativity going. I think like if you'd worked on Broforce for like 4 years without having done any jams during that time, you would have come out just like not knowing how to make a new game, right? But because you started so many projects along the way, it was natural to just like keep trying new things.
Yeah.
It is super nice to like work with other people, and also it's like a really good way to get people into games. It's like my default thing. If someone's like interested in making games or something, it's like, oh, you should come and have a game jam.
Like, there's definitely people that I see as gradually entering the game development industry, although they have a 9-to-5 job that they have to do, but sometimes their weekends are dedicated to making these games, and they're getting closer and closer, it seems, to really being able to take that plunge. It's not like they had to quit their job and start a 2-year project.
Right, yeah. It's easier to go to like an 8-hour game jam at like Free Lives and like, hang out with game developers and like focus for 8 hours making a cool prototype than it is to just like try and like find times in the evenings to work on your game ideas or whatever. I think game jams are like a really nice condensed like motivating space.
The way game jams are often held is in these like public competitions where you get feedback at the end of it, and there's a bit of competitiveness, which I think helps some people. Sometimes some prizes, that kind of thing, and it's just adding to the motivation to do it and to do a good job. There's obviously successful game developers out there that don't do game jamming, right? They might be doing internal game jams. So those would generally be longer form. They start a project or start a prototype, work on it for a bit, and if it's successful, they go ahead with it.
If you're making good games that are successful, you're either prototyping a lot anyway to come up with those ideas, or you're just like incredibly good at having game ideas. If you're just like having good ideas all the time,
well, you may as well follow every one of them up, right?
Yeah. Then, but like that's not something you can reproduce. You can't just tell someone and be like, okay, our plan. Our business strategy is have great ideas and don't have bad ones, and we'll just make a whole bunch of hit games. So I think most developers are doing like a bunch of prototyping, and it's basically a game jam just in like a different context, right? If you're making a small game to test whether it's good, all a game jam really adds to that is kind of like some of the social benefits and those kind of things. Like you do it with people to talk to, and other people making things alongside you, and maybe like a specified time frame or a specified goal to like help you stay motivated and scope well and that kind of thing.
I think there could be a kind of negative effect of game jamming in a particularly, say, undisciplined person. There's like another equation which might be important besides just getting skills, but choosing the right game ideas. Like someone who game jams a lot might have a ton more ideas, and if they're not good at choosing ideas, that's actually maybe more dangerous. I don't think I can point to a game developer and say, that person game jammed too much, because I generally feel I can see a progression in skills. As a person game jams more, their games become more and more interesting over time. Though there are those game developers that just do good game jams, and it doesn't translate into any kind of success, like commercially. They don't get to make games for a living, which might be a lack of some of the things that a person who doesn't game jam a lot but still makes successful games has. And then you were saying earlier, maybe just having great game ideas is more important or as important as practicing a lot of game ideas.
I also think there are maybe some concerns with game jams with regards to like teaching you only like a subset of the skills you need to make like a successful game, in that like game jams teach you a lot about like starting games and not a lot about like finishing games so much.
I have always felt that there is far greater value in learning how to start projects than learning how to finish them. So game jamming, if you're seriously testing your ideas and actually trying to figure out which ideas are good, is a great way at learning how to start projects. It's a great way of practicing that skill of coming up with good game ideas. I have always felt that there is far greater value in learning how to start projects than learning how to finish them. Now, the reason being, finishing a project is completely useless if you can't start a project. If you don't come up with a good project, then finishing a project is not going to, you can have all the skills to finish it well, but so what?
The worst thing you can do is finish a project that wasn't started well or is the wrong project.
Yeah.
Right.
So game jamming, if you're seriously testing your ideas and actually trying to figure out which ideas are good, is a great way at learning how to start projects. It's a great way of practicing that skill of coming up with good game ideas.
What is the perfect length game jam? So we do a lot of 8-hour jams here, and I feel like I really love those, but I feel a lot of the time they're just long enough to like test one idea, and then they never kind of progress. Also, I think they do limit your scope quite a lot. So I think those are great in terms of like creativity and motivation and those kind of things. But I think maybe longer form jams are more useful for like finding good game ideas.
In order to be successful in them, you're naturally going to be choosing game types that can be made in that time, which again gives you practice in maybe game types that aren't going to be successful. Like the game types that can be prototyped in a day or in a weekend are actually very abundant in the marketplace because, of course, they're the fastest to prototype.
Yeah.
So if you're focusing on the short form games that can be finished quickly, you're putting yourself in a more competitive marketplace where if you were coming up with game ideas that can't actually be done in a weekend, maybe take a week, and it requires a week, you're probably in a genre of game that has less competition just because they're harder to make in the first place. If you stop working on a game after 48 hours every single time, there's actually a lot of important things you might need to solve that take 72 hours or 96 hours or that kind of thing, where if you stop working on the game, you might be like, well, I'm probably the best game developer ever. I just had to go to work on Monday,
Yeah.
But you take it a week further and you might be like, everything I add to this game makes it worse. Maybe there's some stuff I can learn.
I didn't actually just run out of time. This is a bad idea.
I mean, the further you go into development, the closer you get to really learning those finishing skills as opposed to the starting skills. But I think there's a lot of starting skills, just like the forming of an idea and making it good, that would still continue for the first month of development, really. I think it might make the most sense if you were really trying to optimize your game jams to teach you the most, to maybe evaluate after 3 days, after a 72-hour jam, whether it's worth doing anything more. But if there is, you should probably, if you want to learn the most, take the time to turn that into a week jam, then evaluate. If that still shows promise, you should probably learn the skills to turn it into a 2-week or a month jam. Stopping a game before you've really explored the promise at all, it leaves you without that information. And you don't actually know if you came up with a good game idea, and then you don't also know how to refine your process of coming up with good game ideas. All of the games we ended up pursuing were games that were exciting just as a concept. I don't know if that's true of all games, but that there is that commonality. All of those games were really fun to play after like 72 hours. Gorn, you could beat up someone in the first day or two, and we're like, this is good, we can do this. Broforce was fun after the first 72 hours, and it got way more fun after the first week, after the first 2 weeks working on it part-time after that. And Genital Jousting was hilarious in the first 8 hours. They all went through that test of, first, are we excited by this concept? Second, after a short amount of time, have we actually found like a core of this game that's exciting?
For Death Smashers, did you have the idea of Death Smashers like long before, and you're just like dying for a good opportunity to make it?
I don't think a single... So Freelance had like a period of, doing these game jams very seriously, working super hard at them, and placing very well in things like Ludum Dare, doing very well in a few other jams of that sort of scale. And not a single one of those games, I think, we waited until we knew the theme before we attempted something. Before we knew what we were going to do.
Right.
We always...
Cheated in all of them.
I don't want to say cheating because it implies we worked on, say, Broforce weeks before we got it, which we didn't do. We just had the idea already. There is that thing about motivation, which is there's that autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I do think purpose, is quite well aligned with like the games that you really want to do, where you want the game to exist, you believe in the game, you're going to feel more motivated, and that's going to cause you to do better, but also there might be a reason why you're motivated. Like your instincts are telling you, I should do this because it's going to be successful. So like when you have that strong purpose that I really want this game to exist, that might be a far better situation to be in than I think I can do a good game for this jam.
Cape Town in particular has like a very strong kind of jamming community who jams regularly.
I think a little bit of that has been, say, the Broforce effect, the Free Lives effect. We spoke loudly about the fact that game jams were helpful to us and were prominently successful. That affects things.
Yeah, and also just invested in it, like opening up the space to people and contributing. Taking time off working on Broforce or whatever to jam is like expensive in the long run, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think the benefits for the community and for the team members.
I mean, I think the biggest benefit there, the most obvious one is the community, like building a community, trying to expose other people to the chances of making games at all. There's camaraderie in it, and that's the reason for doing it with a team, like holding yourselves up in an office or wherever the jam's taking place, and having to make something with a bunch of people and understand them and find things that you love together. You come out of that certainly knowing that aspect of the person a lot better. I think you can use jams well, and I think you can also use them poorly. Like a jam can just be, hey, I'm going to make a thing on a weekend and I'll enjoy it, I'll hang out with friends and that. And it's not the worst thing to do with your time at all, but it's not necessarily the process that leads to you being able to create a game development studio that makes sustainable games, which is, in our case, what we had to do.
There's a lot of people in different situations who are just like jamming for fun, which is great.
There's a lot of game jams where I just want to try a thing that I haven't tried before.
So I think maybe the conclusion is that game jams are fun and useful and have a lot of benefits, but you have to kind of do them properly and like focus on a lot of particular things if you want to use them as a way of like creating a successful game. Like not all game jams are leading you towards successful games.
There's 2,000 roughly games made 4 times a year or 3 times a year at Ludum Dare, right?
Yeah.
And 1 out of about every 10 Ludum Dares or 5 Ludum Dares, 1 out of 10,000 games really is like a proper commercial success. It's a pretty bad ratio.
Maybe. I feel like there's probably...
They list them on their website. And there's like 10 of them, 10 like commercial successes.
Is Broforce on there?
Yeah.
1 in 10,000.
You could do that.
Maybe the secret is just have good ideas all the time.
Maybe that is the secret. There was a question earlier that I wanted to answer and I forgot the answer.
Did you also forget the question?
Yeah.